So on behalf of the American Sephardi Federation, Institute of Jewish Experience, and the Rabbi Arthur Schneier International Program of Yeshiva University, we are very, very happy to be hosting Regine Tessone today, who wrote this wonderful book, a memoir, and that's her daughter on the cover. I just have to say that because she's gorgeous. And we'll be hearing obviously a lot more about what's inside the book, which is also gorgeous. Just a few housekeeping. I said it already, but a few more people have come on since then. Please throw any personal things into the chat. If you have a question, throw it into the Q&A, but we'll be monitoring both the Q&A and the chat. And the question of the day is, what's your favorite Rosh Hashanah food? So throw it into the chat. Maybe at the end, we'll check that out. That wasn't what I meant to say, but I'm trying to think of the word, but I can't. So anyway, I will hand the floor over to Professor Perellis, who is our co-host here, and then we'll come back to me.
Wonderful. It's great to be here again. I think this is our first one of the season, fall, right, Dror?
Is it? I think it is, yeah.
No, I think so. So welcome. And I'm so happy people are here, even though we've changed the dates, no longer Wednesdays always, but it's really an honor to be here again and to create this forum for people to come and learn about the diversity and the complexity and the beauty of the wider Sephardic world. One of the wonderful things of partnering with Institute of Jewish Experience at the ASF is that we have a very wide view of the global Jewish community, and we try to give multiple perspectives and voices and a space for learning, for dialogue, for learning, for opening up your mind and learning new things. And it's really my great honor to introduce our guest today. Regine Monavar Tessone is an Iranian-American fashion designer. As a graduate of the Fashion Institute of Technology, she founded Aqua Modesta, a unique line of modest women's swimwear and sportswear that attained worldwide success. Her initial professional goals achieved, she wrote this memoir to fulfill a lifelong dream, to share the story of her family's incredible escape on the last flight out of Tehran. She resides with her husband and children in New York and Jerusalem. And I want to say, I read an early draft of the book, and it's beautiful, it has a lot of layers to it. And I'm really excited for a larger audience to get to know it and to learn about it and to really kind of get a taste of the experience that you give us access to. So without any further ado, thank you, Regine.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you, Professor, for going over it, all the critiques, all the corrections. I couldn't have done it without your help, really. Baruch Hashem, thank you.
So let's just jump in, okay? How's that? We want to jump in. You have this clothing line, well, actually swimwear line, I should say, right?
Yeah.
And so you're creating yourself. You've raised your kids. We always continue to raise your kids, no matter how old they are. But we've gotten to this point, and then all of a sudden you decided, I need to write my memoir, or I need to write my story. What made you decide to write your story?
That's a good question. So basically, I always spoke about it. People would ask me whenever my husband and I traveled to different Sephardic communities, because he would travel on behalf of Yeshiva University for the Sephardic program. So they would always ask me informally, where are you from? And I would start telling them. And then I would go into the story of how we left Iran and what it was like, and they'd be mesmerized. And they would tell me, you know what, you really should write a book. You should write a book. So, okay, everyone says nice things, but I let it go on the side. And then one specific time we spoke at in Manhattan, and Professor Daniel Tzaddik was there. And he said, you really should write it from a very personal angle of what it is you went through and how you overcame all the different challenges and the obstacles, what it's like to be an immigrant, to really say it from your child point of view that you began into your adulthood. So I took him seriously and I started to write it. And as I started writing it, I would have dreams about like all the different scenes of my life. And there was a specific scene that would just go blank, which is from the time we got to get into the car to get to the airport. I would totally deleted the airport scene itself from my mind. So much so that over the years, I would get really nervous at an airport. I would sweat. I would get very nervous. And when I started to write the book, I asked my siblings what their experience, what they remember on the last day, which was our flight out of Iran. And each one of my siblings remembered something else, because I have a 6-year gap between me and my oldest, 4-year gap between me and my second sibling, and a 6-year gap to my youngest. So we all saw it very different. And my second brother said, "You're writing a book about Iran, but somehow you forgot the most important scene of all, which is the airport." And I thought it was kind of funny, but he said, "You really blanked out. You just totally don't remember." And I said, "I really don't remember that one scene." And as a designer, we're trained to remember every single detail, whether it's of what people wear or surroundings, or this is how we get our inspiration. So I did find it rather odd. How can I go blank on this particular most important event of our life? And so when he started to describe it, I started to get really nervous. And he said, "It looks to me like out of your total fear, you just blanked out that entire episode." And it was remarkable to me, because from the point of him telling it to me, I had to overcome it. So this happened while I'm writing the book. So the book took me a good 10 years to write, simply because I was running a business, raising a family, and between the dreams and the overcoming all the different episodes. But I was really lucky, because throughout the process, I met a lot of other Persians, and I really got to know the people from Iran in a very different way than I did as a child. Because in Iran, I just knew the local people more or less, the people in my neighborhood, the people in my synagogue, the people in my school. I didn't really know the diversity of the Persians from Mashhad, from Shiraz, from Hamadan, from Esfahan, from all these different places in Iran, which I did not travel to as a child. So for me, it was a tremendous eye-opener, and I started to really appreciate what it is to be an Iranian, a Persian. And I had not appreciated fully, I think, until I wrote the book. So that to me was so critical. And of course, to pass it on to my children and to everyone else who reads it, I feel like it's a source of inspiration. And that was really the most important reason for me to write, is to be a source of inspiration. Much like my line, the modest swimwear, I really believe we're all put into this world to be a source of inspiration in one capacity or another. So I hope I continue to do so for all of you.
So let's take a step back, because we did a lot here. Take a step back. Give us a little bit of your background.
Okay. So my background is I was born in Iran, and
Where?
I was born in Tehran, and I went to Jewish school up until the age of 5, after which my father pulled me out from the school called Avrishami. It used to be a school that was half Hebrew, half English. I mean, not English, Farsi. And he pulled me out and he said, "I want you to have a higher education." So he put me in a school called Lycée Razi, where it was half the day French and half the day in Farsi, but on a very high level. So I attended that school till 3rd grade, and then the revolution occurred and we had to leave. And so based upon that education that I received at Lycée Razi from 1st grade to 3rd grade, it was such a high level that when I came to the US, the teachers were astounded at my math level. They didn't understand how could a 8, 9-year-old have such an understanding of math. But that was just in math. And thank God that I learned French at the level I did, because that helped me to learn English quite easily. And then the Hebrew language I picked up here in the United States, because I attended Magen David Yeshiva. And over there at the time, they had a really good Hebrew department. So thank God I got to expand my education, and then I continued on and I went to Yeshiva Flatbush, for those of you know. And upon my last year, I attended public school for 1 year. And the reason was because my parents couldn't afford the tuition. And when I attended public school, they said, "Oh my goodness, you have all these credits. We could do your 2 years of the last 2 years of high school into 1 year." So I completed it quickly, and I attended FIT, which was the school of my dreams, to be a designer. And from FIT, I continued my Jewish education informally through different classes in the Syrian community, which has amazing assortment of classes. And hence that's how I got to do all the things I did. But the writing, I was never an author, but I wrote articles. I wrote articles at FIT. I wrote articles in different places. And I said, you know what? How much harder could it be? Boy, was I naive. But
Yeah.
I have a tremendous appreciation for authors today, more than anything for editors, because I see what's involved. And when I have a good friend of mine who initially, Yael Levy, she told me, just keep writing all your thoughts down. Don't worry about organization. You'll organize it later. Just write it all down. And it was like one big mishkabobble of memories. And really, that was great advice. And I feel like many people it daunts them to write. But if you just start writing and don't worry about the organization, and then the editing will come through, you'll find the right editors. God will give you those people. And just go for it, because it's so important to get these memories down. There's not enough personal stories about Iran. And it's very important because we as Iranians really went through a lot. And like we're still going through it, because I still bump into people, our family there, and they tell me I can't really expose my entire story because I have family there. It'll put them at risk. So I'm lucky I don't have any family there, and I could have this brought about and spoken about. Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about what it was like growing up there, what you remember from there, or from your siblings, what they said, or?
So of course, I remember very distinctly many memories, and it comes back to me throughout what I do throughout the year and the days, because that's who you are. You can never let it go. You know, when I came to America, I just wanted to erase everything, erase where I came from, marry a non-Persian, because I didn't want to have to think about it or deal with it. But it's very foolish, because it's who you are. It's your entity. It's your essence. It's always going to come back one way or another. So what I remember distinctly is our life in Iran, the respect element. You know, sometimes I'm blown away at how like the kids will speak back, whether it's at me or another adult. And we never spoke back. It didn't mean that we didn't have the understandings, or what you would say today. The kids are so much smarter than us in so many ways, but we also had that, but we didn't speak back. You know, an adult would tell us something, or a parent would tell us something, and we would have to just go along with it, even if we totally disagreed about it. This idea of freedom of speech, to me, is one of the most freedoms that I enjoy in America, like to no end, because we didn't have that. We couldn't say whatever, you know, my father would always tell me, you could think what you want, but you can't say it out loud. Remember that. And I would be like, why not? It could be about any subject matter, how I felt about a particular dish. If someone served me something to eat, I couldn't say, no, I really don't like it, and I get nauseous looking at it, or the smell. You know, as a child, you know, you're forced to be very diplomatic, very politically correct, so to speak. And this is how I grew up. So I could not express what I really felt if I was frustrated or angry or upset. So my father would say, you don't really have a right to express that. It's not respectful. And he would say, if you feel like crying, go to your room and cry. If you're upset, express it in privacy, but you can't express it publicly. So that to me was a huge part of my childhood growing up. And it took me many years to learn that I can express, but respectfully. And I can say when I'm frustrated, but respectfully. So that was a big part of it. Another big part I remember was really the artistic component of everything, because Iran was really, is, I don't know if today, but it was in our time, a beautiful, beautiful country. We had a lot of nature. And we would, in school, we would go outside our classrooms and sit by lakes and in the nature and recite poetry. And we would do, I was just telling a friend of mine recently that I took carpet weaving when I was 6 years old at the Lycée Razi. We were taught as an extracurricular how to weave a carpet, unbelievable, on a huge loom. I mean, or wow. I learned how to do stained glass as a child, or foil art, and all of these art things that people today are like, what is that? Like they're first learning it as an adult. We learned it as children. And so painting, drawing, all of this came effortlessly natural. When I went to look for a job in New York City years later, I went to a Persian guy and he was looking for an assistant designer. And he said to me, where are you from? And I said, I'm Persian. He spoke to me in Farsi and he goes, okay, you're hired. And I said, hired for what? So he said, as my assistant designer. I said, you didn't even look at my portfolio. He said, I don't need to. You're Persian. All Persians have artistic skill. I said, all of them? He said, yes, all of them, because this is what we were trained at. So I really feel blessed that I intuitively and naturally look at nature and really appreciate it. I have an eye for art in a very natural way, and an eye for understanding colors in a natural way. So even at FIT, although they trained us further, it came intuitive to me and very natural to me. And I feel blessed for that, and it has to do with our background, our growing up. So these are the two things to me, but where the lack was for me personally was in the religious education, in the Torah education, in the Hashkafa HaYehudit we had. Like, in other words, our father and mother always said to us, Baruch Hashem, thank God. You should thank God. You have everything you need, this idea of Hashkafa HaYehudit, to always look at everything with gratitude, we had. But the halachic component, I didn't have. I didn't know any of it. I didn't know about all these holidays. We celebrated Rosh Hashanah, Kippur, Pesach, but I didn't know there was a holiday called Sukkot. I didn't know there was a holiday Purim. I didn't know there was a holiday Shavuot. So I feel like I missed out on that, and I appreciate having that in the US, and I got to have more of that religious education. So I feel like these different kinds of educations helped me become who I am. It made me a little bit more well-rounded.
Regine, I have so many questions. So even just from what we've just been talking about, it's so interesting. That aspect of religion, is your sense, was that common among your parents' generation? Was it a generational thing? Was it just happens to be your family? And the other question is, what happened when you came to America on that level?
One at a time.
Yeah, well, they're connected, so
So basically, in Iran, because I went to a school like Lycée Razi, so my father was trying to have us more in a secular style of lifestyle. He wanted me to have a more well-rounded overall secular education. So I feel like, although he himself studied with a great Talmid Chacham called Rav Chaim Moreh, my father himself had all that understanding, but I did not. And my brothers, some of them did, some did not, because we were all in different age groups and different schools. So I don't think all Persians were like us. And as a matter of fact, so much so that when I speak to other Persians, even from our area, Yusufabad, which is where we lived, there was a very large boulevard named after Yosef HaTzadik, Yusuf Abad. And they all said to me, what do you mean? How do you, we were very much part of the synagogue life. And so the synagogue life, yes, we went Friday night to synagogue and Shabbat synagogue. But in terms of I don't know, we would go out after lunch with a car, we would go wherever, to go on picnics and whatnot. But so we personally did not live that extreme religious life. We did not. Other Persians did. Obviously, other Persians from other cities like Mashhad, of course, did. They were very observant. And when I met Persians from Shiraz, they're extremely observant also. And then, so I feel like it was really, a lot had to do with my family, not so much generationally. And also, we were so diverse. It's like, someone asked me, the Syrian community, we have more or less the same customs, more or less. You're not that different than another community, than another family living within the community. But in Tehran, it was really, really diverse, because it had to do with what your parents did for a living, whom they were associated with. The lifestyles were very varied. And the wealth was very varied. So that puts you into different classes automatically. So that had to do with it. So coming to the United States, coming into the Syrian community and not even knowing what Arabic Jews are, I didn't even know what that means. I didn't know Arabs spoke Hebrew. I didn't know there was Arabic Jews. My mother was born in Lebanon, never knew she spoke Arabic till I came to the United States. I never heard her speak Arabic till we came to the United States. So that was a shock for me. You know, in Iran, my father would refer to the Arabs like as the Arabic lower class people who played in sewers they weren't educated. He never told me there were Arabic Jews. I didn't know about that. So coming to America and learning there's Arabic Jews and I'm living amongst them, going to school with them, and then the Ashkenazim, I had no idea what they are at all. I just didn't know there was such a thing. I mean, I didn't even know there was a Holocaust. Like, so all of this to me was all like brand new, and learning all this was like, wow, I had no idea. And as I did my business, to show you, I only learned more. I learned that all the Hasidic, different groups of Hasidic sects and all the different rebbes, and I had no idea we were such a large, diversified nation. It's like, I just thought I'm a Jew and that's it, a simple Jew. I think in many ways till today, I see myself like that, but maybe others don't see me that way, but I see myself as a simple Jew, just a plain, there's Jewish and there's not Jewish and I'm Jewish. That's it. You know, so that has a lot to do with it. And I appreciate that. I appreciate the diversity today because it only enhances your life. But at the time, it was just a shocker. I remember coming to Mag and David, and the kids in school would tell me, well, are you an SY? And I'd be like, what's an SY? Are you Syrian? And I would go home and I would ask my mom, am I a Syrian? She goes, well, that means you come from Syria. Do you come from Syria? And I'd say, no, I come from Iran. So then you're not Syrian. I'd go back to school. I tell the kids, I'm not Syrian. So what are you? J-Dub? What's a J-Dub? Ashkenaz? What's an Ashkenaz? I would go home to my mom, what's an Ashkenaz? She goes, those are people who come mostly from Europe. Did you come from Europe? So I would say no. And this is how my parents would answer questions. They wouldn't just tell you the answer, they would make you think about it. So I would come back to school and they're like, I don't know. Well, we don't know what's a Persian. They didn't know what's a Persian. Today, Iran is all over the news. In 1979, although it was on the news because of the hostages, most people really didn't know, what does that mean? You come from Iran. What does it mean? Did you take the hostages? Are you one of them? Who are you? Like, they don't know the difference of a Jewish Iranian to a non-Jewish Iranian. That included our own Jewish people. They didn't know. So I was the only Iranian in Magen David Yeshiva, which is an all-Syrian school. You can imagine their shock as much as it was my shock. Yeah.
So you started mentioning a little bit about the, you kind of mentioned it. I'm just going to put it out there that in the book, you mentioned that everybody loved the Shah and you were very, very much respectful of the Shah and his regime. And then all of a sudden, your father is telling you to say on the street, long live Khomeini.
Yes. It was a total shock because in the Lycée Razi, they gave us books from the Iranian School Board of Education. And inside of every book, language book, science book, math book, was a photograph of the Shah and his whole family. And it was a special picture to us because it was the affinity. Basically, everything we had in Iran in terms of education was because of the Shah's enhancement program on education. So we valued that, and it was the Shah encouraged patriotism to Iran as Iranians. He encouraged us all that we're all Iranians, no matter what religion we are. So I really felt very connected to the Shah, you know, and my father happened to do a lot of business and work with people in the upper echelons of the Iranian government. And so they also valued that because they were getting wealthy from that reality. So we had tremendous respect for the Shah. Of course, we didn't know about Savak, and Savak is like the Mukhabarat of Iran. It's like a very, under the Shah, it was a very intense, cruel, interrogative system of, you know, against dissidents and people who they thought would commit treason. So we only learned about that later on, which is why initially a lot of even Iranian Jews went against the Shah because they felt that it was very cruel, the interrogation system, that they didn't dream that the Iranian Revolutionary Guards would be even worse than that. So yeah, so there was a lot of that aspect into it. So it has to do with what you did in Iran and what your job was there. You know, years later, I met a woman who was married to a Jewish senator in Iran, and she would describe some of the things she went through and what Iran was like. And it was funny because intuitively I said to her, you know, I have a feeling the people who made the revolution were not Iranians. And she said, wow, you're very perceptive. She goes, what made you say that? I said, their eyes, they were not Persian eyes. Persians have a very distinct looking eyes. They have a certain look from the nose up. It has a lot of chen in it. It has a lot of kindness in it. Mohabbat, kindness, which is my first chapter of the book. And they didn't have that look, that special look. And so she said, that's very perceptive. You happen to be right. I know for a fact that they did import a bunch of Muslims from the Middle East to come and to create the revolution in Iran. So it was actually very interesting. Hold on, I put it back. Yeah. Yep. What was the next question? Sorry.
Well, I'm going to ask one more, and then I'm going to, while you're answering, I'm going to encourage everybody to please open your mic, open your cameras. Don't open your microphones yet, please, unless I call on you. But I do encourage you to please open your cameras so we can see who we're speaking to and hopefully ask some questions. I know Arthur's had one for a while. But in the meantime, you have a great little description of Friday in Iran, in Tehran. Can you tell us a little bit, the little excerpt from the book?
Yes, so Fridays was very special. I would go with my father to shul. I did not read Hebrew in Iran. I was first learning Aleph Bet with a shaliach from Israel who would come to the synagogue and teach the youth Aleph Bet, the Nekudot, how to pray. And unfortunately, because of the revolution kicked off, all of our Israeli shlichim had to immediately airlift out of Iran. So he was among the first to be airlifted. So I used to go to shul with my father. My mom did not go to synagogue, and I didn't know how to read. So I would sit with random lady in the ladies section because they would tell me, listen, you're a little too old to sit with your dad in the men's section. I was 8 years old. And this kind lady, she would read from the Siddur. And unfortunately, I don't remember her name. She was a beautiful young lady. And I remember just looking at her with like envy, like, oh, I wish I could read from the Siddur. What is she so intensely reading? What is it? And so she slowly put her fingers over the letters and would tell me, did you learn the Aleph Bet? Let me show you the Chadodi. And she would start on the Chadodi. And she would have me memorize through memorization. And thank God I had a good memory. I think I still have one, thank God. And through memorization, I learned the prayer of the Chadodi. And then I learned Yigdal Elohim Chai. And then she taught me the Shema. And so I really was very blessed to have that. And to me, that was very special. And afterwards, I would go with my father. We would go, before we would go out, they would serve kuku. I don't remember if they served kuku Friday night or Shabbat day. That I don't remember exactly. But they would serve us kuku. And kuku is like an omelet made with all these herbs that is so delicious. And it smelled like heaven. So for me, that smell associated with the synagogue and having the kuku sabzi, it has like tremendous comfort food for me. I could eat it all day. And it's very healthy besides the fact. But so there's that association. And then the besamim, of course, you don't leave the synagogue without reciting Birkat Besamim, which in Israel, they're very makpid about. So when I'm in Israel, I feel a lot of that Persian sentiment comes back to me because it's very similar. You know, it is the Mizrach after all. We're from the Middle East. So it's beautiful. You know, that to me, those Friday nights, walking back with my dad to synagogue, from synagogue, going home, those are nights that was so special. And then Shabbat day also. And I never forgot that. And one of the most beautiful things I remember, the first time my father took me into the synagogue, he said, you see this place? You see this place? This is God's house. You can't speak here except to God. You only speak to God. And that left me such an impression. And I guess there was a section that was sealed off. And my dad, I would say, Dad, what's over there? Because I was always curious. And he would say, that's where God rests. You don't need to go there. And I would say, what do you mean God rests? God rests? Like he's tired? Like he gets tired? He would say, well, all these people pray to him, so he also needs to rest. And so it was like this awe. I had this awe of God and the awe of the synagogue. So I knew not to speak in it. And that to me stayed with me all my life.
I know, Arthur, you had a question or your hand is up. So I am inviting everybody to please, even though it says you're a panelist, you're not being promoted to a panelist. You're just being promoted, like the few people that did already, to open your cameras and your microphones. And your cameras, keep your microphones on mute. We do encourage it so that we can talk to somebody. I see both Arthur and Elizabeth, if you can rejoin as panelists, then you can ask your questions. That would be better. But Ronnie, I think you were going to say something.
I have a quick question, and I hope that my students have great questions. I'm sure they do. They always do. So love to hear from them as well. Regine, a question about, in the book, for those of you who haven't read it, Regine intersperses verses of beautiful Persian poetry throughout the narrative. So, there'll be different chapters and she'll weave in and even if you don't know Farsi, like I don't know Farsi, but Persian poetry is world famous, and she makes beautiful use of it. Can you can you tell us a little bit about your connection to Persian poetry? Was it something that was just alive in your house, or is it a personal thing?
So it's basically in the Persian culture, it's very much alive in everyone's house. And it's like, it has a lot of chokhmat chaim, it has a lot of life's wisdom. So one of the things, my uncle, alav shalom, my uncle Moshe Moiz in Farsi, he used to say, kuh be kuh nemirese, adam be adam mirese. He used to say, like I would say, Don Moshe, why are you always explaining everything to me? He used to love explaining my history, where we come from. And he would say this particular saying, kuh be kuh nemirese, which means a mountain doesn't reach a mountain. Adam be adam mirese. A person reaches another person. In other words, if you really want to get any message out there, or you want your kids to know about where you come from, it's not the mountains that are going to talk about it. It's the human touch. Humans are going to have to tell it to other humans. And so this is like a regular saying. Or I would go to Israel to visit my Israeli cousins, and I would help them with whatever they needed help, to set the table or whatever. And my cousin would spit out a saying. She would say, do daste, chahar das, davozdah daste, which means 2 hands is 2 hands, but 4 hands is equivalent to 12. So I would say, what does that mean, Shoshi? I don't know what that means. What does that even mean? So she would say, that means that when you just have an extra pair of hands, someone helps you, it's even more than the assumption that it's 2 more hands. So that's what it means. And Persian has a lot of that. It's just nonstop. And my dad, alav shalom, he used to always throw out these things. And I would be like, I really don't understand, because he would speak Farsi at a very high level. And as much as he would like dumb it down, so to speak, bring it to a really low level, it would still be hard for me to understand. I'd understand the Farsi when he brought it down, but I didn't understand the message behind it. And it wasn't until my adulthood that I really, really appreciated those sayings.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Elizabeth? Oh, sorry. Elizabeth had a question.
Go ahead.
Oh, no, you just had your hand. Or Arthur, you had a question? I just want to make sure. And then we'll come to you, Carolyn. They just had them first. I thought they had it. Do you see it on mute, Arthur? No.
Unmute. He mute his voice.
Yes.
Okay. No, I didn't have a question.
Oh, so everybody just had their hands up. Okay.
Okay.
That's okay. So let's go to Carolyn, and then we'll go to David or David.
Yeah, I know you know a lot about my background, Dora, but I don't know if the people participating in Regina. At one time, Magen David was almost entirely Ashkenazi, and then the neighborhood became Syrian. My step-grandson, who is half Persian, attended Magen David about 10 years after you. But I also remember neighbors from Syria who weren't Arabic speaking, but were Ladino speaking. And so there were Ladinos from Syria as well. I mean, I could understand my neighbor's mother speaking Ladino and comparing her children's foods with the her Syrian son-in-law, and they were different. The Ladino speaking and the Arabic speaking Syrians. I can understand why you never remembered that airport. It was in and out, because I touched down in that airport on the way into India as a Fulbright scholar, and we were allowed to get down off the plane onto the tarmac to stretch our legs, but we were not allowed in the airport. And coming back, we only touched down. This was in the Pan Am round the world flight. Coming back, when we were coming back, it touched down on the ground only long enough to pick up American diplomats and out. And they said the only way you could avoid the bullets was to duck. So it must have been a very, very quick experience in that airport.
No, it was actually a very traumatic experience.
Yeah.
Which is why it's important to read the book, because that was the whole point. Was that how could I remember every single detail, the flat tire on the way to the airport, all the things that happened, but I couldn't remember that scene. So that particular day, it was a very, very traumatic experience there. And that's
Right, trying to get out.
Yeah. Yeah.
David or David, I don't know how you pronounce it. Sorry. You were unmuted before. No, we still don't hear you.
Oh,
Sorry. Okay.
okay. All right. All right. Regina, I'm so happy to see you on Zoom. And you are my second cousin.
I know. I was looking at you, the name, David Rabbani. Wow, mashallah. I haven't seen you.
Well, good to see you here. And I hope I put my phone number and keep in touch with us actually. And
Oh,
my son, he's a lawyer now in Manhattan, studying Cardozo.
nice.
Yeah. So keep in touch. I have so much memory from your father, your
Oh,
uncle, Moise, Moshe, and all of you.
yeah.
I learned a lot in Iran.
I would appreciate if you remind me how we're related. That would-
Yeah, that was really surprised to see you. And when I met you, I mean, when I came to your house, you were a little girl, and now you changed so much.
Yeah.
And my wife found out about your Zooming stuff, so I'm so happy to see you. And I hope I can see you. Do you live in Brooklyn?
Yes.
Oh, very good. I live in Connecticut, so definitely I send my son to see you there, or I come and pick up.
But remind me how we're related. Remind me the relation. How you're my father.
Your father, yeah, your father and my mother, they're cousin.
Okay.
First cousin.
Nice.
You
Beautiful.
are my second cousin.
Ah, okay. So I'm related to every Rabbani or just to you?
No, just me.
Related?
From my mother's side.
Okay.
From my mother's side, you are very second cousin. So in any way, I'm so happy, pleasure to see you. You're succeeded in your business,
Oh.
and famous around the world.
Thank God for that show. Thank God.
Without a shock, I hope we can get together and we're gonna repeat our past history with you over there.
I'd like that. I would love that.
Very good.
Thank you.
All right, that's so far. That's it. If something come up to my mind, I raise my hand.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Merci.
So I'm going to get into a little bit of a tense time in the book. You say that you bumped into this man who used to teach Hebrew in Iran, and then you realized he's from Shiraz and he's one of the 13. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that was a really crazy story. I happened to be going in a store to buy some fish, and there was a gentleman who worked in this store, and I looked at him, and again, he looked Persian because you could tell from the eyes, from this expression in the face. So I said to him in Farsi, "Are you Persian?" And he looked at me and he answered me in Farsi. And he continued to take care of me like a customer. And I really had all these questions to ask him. And every time he would turn around to prepare something and I would talk to him, he wouldn't respond to what I was talking to him. Then he would turn back and I would look puzzled. So he would say, "What's the matter?" I said, "I asked you a question and you didn't respond." And he said, "Oh, you did? Oh, I forgot to mention I have partial hearing in one of my ears and in the other one I don't hear." So it was an odd thing. So I said, he didn't look old. He was a young, relatively, I would say maybe 50s, 60s at the time. And I looked at him and I said, why is that? And then he looked at me and he said, "Long story." And I said, "Oh, just answer me. What did you used to do in Iran?" And then he looked so sad and he said, "Well, I used to be a teacher and I loved teaching Jewish children." So I said, "What city are you from?" So he said, "Shiraz." And I said, "You're from Shiraz?" And then I looked a little bit, I guess, like trying to understand. And he said, yes, I'm one of the 13. And then he started telling me about how those 13 Shirazi Jews were charged with espionage and they were taken to prison and they were beat up. Some of them lost their vision, some of them lost other limbs. But he said none of us walked out of there well. And he said it's remarkable that we walked out. And he said they were charged with espionage and all they did was teach Jewish children subjects about Judaism, because in Iran, they say that you're allowed to continue teaching Judaism, but nothing to do with Israel. And he said, believe me, we didn't teach anything about Israel. No songs, Israeli songs, none of it. All about Judaism. But they charged us with espionage. And he said, I guess they used us as a negotiating factor. And unfortunately, they gave us very severe beatings every day. And we really, really suffered. So I said to him, why you don't want to continue teaching here in America? I mean, you have so much to give. And he said he just doesn't have the same joy of life that he used to have. And he feels it's not a good way to teach if you don't feel joy. It really broke my heart. And then he said, why are you asking all these questions? And I said, well, I was, thinking of writing a book at the time. And he said, you're not a journalist, are you? I said, no, I'm not a journalist, but I may use your story. Is that okay? He said, use the story, but don't use my name, because I have family there. So I did. I used the story, but not the name. Yeah.
Carolyn, you had another quick question?
Yeah, well, we're at it. Regina, do you have any examples of your fashion creations that you can show us?
Well, I happen to have it behind you. So basically, here's some of the styles. I don't know what you see from there, but these are some of our swim dresses. And
I have to say, she was written up in the New York Times. She had quite a bit of press about it.
yes, but basically, it has like a skirt that has a pants sewn into the skirt, like that, into the waist. And it comes with a swim bra that you wear underneath the top.
Mm.
And they're made of swimwear fabric, and they were intended to swim in. So when I first made the line and I went to a store, they told me, go to Borough Park and see if anyone will buy it, because that's a perfect testing ground. I went into the store and I offered it to one of the big stores there, and they laughed at me. They just sat and laughed. And I said, what's so funny? And they said, you should be an American inventor. It's hysterical. Who's going to wear all that to go swimming? You think women are going to wear all that? So I looked at him very seriously and I said, not only are women going to wear all that, if you don't buy it, I'll sell to all of your customers. And I'll do it directly. I'll make more money. So he looked at me and goes, I like your audacity because you have such chutzpah. I'm going to order the items from you. But he said, if I sell them, I'm going to copy you next year. And I said, you're not going to succeed with it because the idea didn't come to you. You won't succeed. And he said, wow, you're so sure. I said, sure, I'm sure. Because if God gives me an idea, he wants me to go with it. And if it came to you, then you would have gone with it. But it didn't come to you. And sure enough, that's what he did. He did copy me the year later, and he didn't succeed. But the line is made in America. And what I really love about it is that when I started my line, all of my religious customers were like, they didn't have internet. They didn't even have a smartphone. They didn't know how to use a computer. So I advertised in the local papers and in Jewish press, and I had my phone number, and people would call me and say, what does it look like? And I would describe it on a telephone with no pictures. And they go, what color does it come in? Black and turquoise. Which one you want? And they would tell me, okay, I'll take the black. And then they would send me a check, because I didn't even take credit cards. They would send me a check, and I would have to cash the check to make sure it was good. And then I would ship it to them. And that's how we started. And then fast forward, as time went by, I would get calls from people telling me, I'll make you a free website. You got to have a website. And so that's how the Jewish people are remarkable, because they're out to help. And it was an item that helped them. So I used to do ads, and my ads I would barter. I remember this Jewish actor called me up. He was also a caricaturist, and he said, I don't know if you guys know him, David Sokol. And
Yeah, of course.
And he said, I'll make you your first ad. Just send one to my wife as a gift. I said, sure. I had no idea he was so famous. And then people called me and said, wow, is that David's work on the ads? I'd be like, yeah. And then sure enough, I connected him to someone we know who we used to go to their community in Bell Harbor. And he does organic snacks. And we made a shidduch between them, and he started to do the graphic work for him, which was really nice. So it was really a cute little connection over there. Yeah, Baruch Hashem. Any other?
This is delightful. Thank you so much. My question is, it's Elizabeth here. Why swimwear? I love the niche. I'm just wondering, is that what you did when you were at school?
No. So in FIT, one of the things they would teach you is, when you're a designer, pay attention to what's missing in the market and fill it. Because you're designers. That's what you're created to do. That's what you're going to do. So I had a teacher who used to say, you know what's really missing in the market? Funeral clothes. Any of you want to go into making a line of funeral clothes? Because the Christians would spend through the nose for that. Like, I was like, who wants to do that? Nobody. So, so we're like, no, we'll stay out of that one. Then she would tell us, you know what, lingerie, you could do this. Because at the time, in the 1980s, lingerie was getting like a really large market share. And so we didn't really want to do that. So as time went by and I got more religious, I said, what's missing? What's missing is I don't have a modest swimwear. Why are we wearing these awful cotton t-shirts and going into the water with them? They ride up, they soak up all the water. This is ridiculous. And I thought to myself, well, you're a designer. Go research what kind of fabrics, what cuts, what. So I went to FIT. And they have what's called a forecast room. It's fantastic. It's worth going there just for that room. And it predicts what style, what colors and silhouettes are going to be in. So we heard Calvin Klein would sign up one of his proteges to go to FIT just to have access to that forecast room. So I went to the room and I looked at the different silhouettes. Then I went and I researched what did women wear in the United States or anywhere in the world when people would dress more modestly. There was a time the world dressed more modestly. So when I researched that, I uncovered fantastic stuff. I took pictures of it. I photocopied, and it showed that the men would take the wagons to the shoreline, and inside the wagons, the women would dress down to their petticoats, and their petticoats was made out of what? Cotton or wool. They were all natural fibers back then in the early 1900s. And they would go into the water. They would come out, get back in the wagon, and of course, it's like a sponge. So I said, that's interesting. And then I continued going through the decades. And as the synthetic materials hit the market, polyester, nylon, so the silhouettes got to be less modest, the ironing. So I said, this is so silly. So basically, we need the correct fabric and create the silhouettes I want. I'm going to create the real Beged Yam, which means an outfit for the water. So I said, let me do it that way. And I made the first silhouette, the dress, my first dress. And I wore it to Bell Harbor in Queens to the water. I went in, I came out, I timed it, how long it takes to dry. And I went in again and came out. And I kept doing that and seeing how I started doing lap, front strokes, back strokes, trying to see, does it function in all of this? What needs to be done? So the fabric I had bought was two-way stretch, and it bothered me that I couldn't make every movement. So I went to the swimwear stores in the city, and I asked them, what's the fabric used to do all the different movements? And they said it's something called four-way stretch. It's very expensive. It's actually one of the most expensive fabrics in the market. So I said, okay, it doesn't matter. Sell me this much yardage. He goes, you need all that for a bathing suit? I said, yes, I need 2.5 yards for a bathing suit. He thought I was crazy. So I took it and I went to the pattern maker and I told her, this is what I'm making. She thought I was nuts. She's like, who's going to wear the whole dress to swim in? I said, don't worry about it. Just do it. And then I went back to Bell Harbor, swam with it, timed it. I did all that. I came out and this woman was walking and she goes, where'd you get that from? I love it. How much is it? So I said, how much would you pay? So she told me what she would pay. And I go, that's the price. She goes, so where are you selling it? I said, I'm selling it. I'll have it by next week. And I didn't have anything. So she called me and I sold it to her like that. And that's how we started the business. Then we went to the stores. But that's how the line began. So basically, when you have a need and you're a designer, you create the reality.
By any chance, are you a member of Fashion Group International?
No.
FGI?
What is that? No.
It's a trade association that was started back when Eleanor Roosevelt, Judith Heath, FGI.org. I'll drop it in the chats. It will, yeah, it's amazing.
Thank you. Okay, no, I don't know.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. But I'll tell you a quick little story. I had a journalist from Wall Street Journal contact me to write about it. And she was not very fond of me for whatever reason. And because she kept telling me, I want to write about your sportswear item. I also have something made for sportswear for biking, from moisture wick fabric. And she said, I'm going to write that it's a harem pant. And I said, please do not write those words because they're not. And I don't design anything for the Arabs. It's all my target market was the Jewish market, the Orthodox Jewish market. I said, if you do that, you're actually going to hurt me. Please don't write it. And if you decide to write it, I'll sue you. And she said, are you going to sue the Wall Street Journal? Who do you think you are? And I said, to me, it doesn't matter who you are. If you cannot write false information, I will not allow you. So she was very adamant and she said, I'm not going to write about the sportswear. I said, fine, just don't miswrite the words. So she ended up writing about my swimwear and she asked me for a photograph. I did not send a photograph. I sent her finally, she kept asking, I need a picture. I sent her a picture, but in the end, she published it as an illustration, not as the actual photograph. But she made one mistake. She wrote the style number under it. And that style number sold out like hotcakes. And through that, I got a call from FIT who said, we had no idea we had a famous person here among us. So this was very funny. And I said, look, God, you have a great sense of humor. So where someone wants to hurt you, I learned long ago, if you have deep faith in God, no one will hurt you. No one. After all, I come from Iran, from Khomeini land. So I know what it's like to be saved over and over again. When God does not want your time to be up, it's not going to be up no matter what. Same with your finance, same with your health, same with everything. So that's why I shared that story. I just wanted you to know it. That although she wanted me not to make the sales by writing the style number, it was the very style everybody looked up and purchased.
Thank you. Thank you so much all for participating and for the questions. And Regine, thank you for writing the book and for sharing it with us.
Hope you all read it and enjoy it and inspire you.
Yes, you'll all receive in the follow-up email a link
to everybody, a healthy, happy year for all of you.
Amen, amen.
Not Tova, David. Stay in touch.
And we
Happy
hope to have
New Year.
everybody joining us in the upcoming programs. We have October 2nd. Actually, Regine's husband, if I may say it, is doing a program together with us and with Cantor Yechiel Nahari, Chazan Yechiel Nahari, and we will be doing Slichot on October 2nd. We also have some more book talks coming up, so please make sure to follow us and watch us and be in touch.